This morning on BRN, how can I make ends meet without asking my partner to go back to work? Joining me now is Maurie Backman, a senior financial journalist. Maurie, always great to see you. Thanks for joining us on the program this morning.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jeff.
All right, in this segment, I'd like to ask you about your research and thoughts about going back to work, or couples that have, in both partners have worked in the past, but now they may have a child, and they think about, hey, should I stay home or should I not stay home? Should I go back to work? How big of a population is this, and is this a big deal?
It's certainly a big deal. And I could tell you from firsthand experience that it was a dilemma that my family faced when my kids were younger, because I have one child and then I have twins who are just a few years younger. So basically, I was looking at very, very hefty daycare costs because my kids are all so close in age. So back before, when my kids were eligible to go to actual school, I would have been looking at something like $1,000 or $1,200 a week for daycare. So back then, we kind of had to run the numbers and say, well, we're going to be paying 50 something, $60,000 a year for daycare, for these three kids for me to work full time. Does this make sense? And so back then we made the decision that I would just work part-time on a freelance basis. And now I work full-time on a freelance basis. But the problem, Jeff, is that, not everyone has a job that's suited to, part-time or freelance, on a freelance, not everyone can do their work on a freelance basis. If you've got someone who's a teacher, you can't part-time, you could substitute teach as available, but you can't teach a classroom part-time. If you're maybe a medical assistant or something where you need to be in an office, you can't do that. So it's a really tough choice, and it definitely impacts a lot of parents given the cost of daycare today. And do you want me to tell you what that is?
Well, yes, Maurie, I'd like to know the cost of care, and maybe how has it changed over time? I would assume it's gone up like everything else.
It's definitely gone up. So I pulled numbers from care.com, and they just found that the average weekly cost of daycare for an infant is $343. And for a toddler, it drops a little bit to $315. And the reason is just because there's different rules with ratios, depending on caregiver to child ratios, depending on age. I'm going to tell you that it's definitely gone up over time, and it's just becoming less and less affordable for parents with a pretty typical income. So let's say you've got, an infant and a toddler who need daycare at the same time. You're looking at $600 something a week. Okay.
A week? I thought that was a month. A week. So you're talking. Go ahead. I'm sorry. That's a lot of money per year.
You're looking at probably just like ballpark 30-ish thousand dollars a year or more on daycare. Now, another thing I did, Jeff, I pulled median earnings for American families as of last quarter. Median income was about, for the typical worker, rather, the typical worker's income, median income is about $62,000 a year. So let's do the math together, right? If you're gonna be going back to work, earning roughly $60,000 a year, you're not getting to keep all of that. The IRS gets some. You probably have commuting costs, and then you're spending 30 something thousand dollars on daycare. It's very easy to see why a lot of people with very young children just can't go back to work. It just, the numbers don't work. You're working 40 hours a week, and you're driving yourself nuts, and you're incurring all these expenses to maybe take home a few $1,000s in some cases. And that assumes you're even earning, the 60,000, 62,000 median wage. What if you're in a lower income situation? What if you're earning $40,000 a year? By the 45, by the time you do your taxes and your commute and your daycare, you're earning nothing. So I know a lot of parents, Jeff, who had to make that tough decision when their kids were younger, before their kids were school age. Once you get into the school age, it becomes a little bit easier in that these before and after care programs are not nearly as expensive as daycare. So you maybe get a little bit of a break there because maybe you're spending, I don't know, $7,000, $8,000 a year, 9,000, 10,000 on daycare as opposed to 30. But that really just virtually forces a lot of parents out of the workforce when their kids are young.
Yeah, and this is kind of outside the realm of finance, Maury, but I just bring it up anyway. I wonder culturally or what the impact would be. Like, what's the impact to the child? I mean, if you are home taking care of your children, whether you're a man, woman, whatever, taking care of your child, you are, there's a bond that grows there, right? I wonder what the impact is to the child if both adults have to work. It puts a lot of pressure on the supporting family, maybe grandma, grandpa, cousins, aunts, whatever can take care of the child. But it's going to have an impact on the child beyond just the finances.
Definitely. And look, it goes both ways, right? Obviously, it's very nice to be home with your kids when they're young. That's not something that my oldest got because when he was an infant, he was shipped off to daycare. And at the time there were a lot of feelings of guilt. I could also tell you that, now that he's a teenager, he certainly doesn't remember all those times being shipped off to daycare as an infant, and I don't think it really ruined him. So I think parents have to let go of some of that guilt. If going to work and getting childcare is the right choice for your family, I think that's fine. I think it's also lovely to be able to, have that time with your children when they're very young. And if you're able to make it work on one income, that's great too. I think not everyone though has that support network of, oh, grandma and grandpa can watch the child a couple of days a week or this, I'll tell you from personal experience, we don't have any family who lives near us. So we had to just pay for childcare. And on days where, my child was sick and couldn't go to daycare, one of us had to stay home and call out of work. And that can have career implications too. And that's another part of the decision, Jeff. A lot of people say, well, I've got a young kid or I've got two young kids. I don't want to be that employee who has to call out every 12 days because, my kid's got a fever. And unfortunately, Jeff, when you have infants, these very young children in daycare who don't have the most robust immune systems, they're going to get sick a lot. And it's going to happen. So I think that's part of the decision too. You want to kind of ask yourself, even aside from the numbers, just how much stress do I want to take on? And for me, I could tell you that we did it for one child. We did the daycare thing for one child, but there was no way financially or logistically we were putting 3 kids into daycare at the same time. That just wasn't going to happen. So we had to make some cutbacks and some sacrifices to make it work on one income for a while there. And I'm happy to kind of share some of the things that we did because I think this is a situation that a lot of people are in. And I think it's important to know that not everyone, I want to be clear here, not everyone, but some people with proper planning can make it work on one income.
Well, Maury, that's a good tease because I want to hold you over to tomorrow's show. When we pick up the conversation, Maury's going to tell us some tips and tricks if you want to try to make it work on one income. Maury, thanks so much for joining us, and we look forward to having you back on the program tomorrow.
Awesome.
And don't forget to subscribe to our daily newsletter, The Morning Post, for all the news in one place. Details, of course, at our website. And we're back again tomorrow for part 2 of our conversation with Maury. You're not going to want to miss it. Until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.